ladies and gentlemen. This is CouchPotatoGM.com. Couch Potato General Manager is a YouTube channel. You know it because you're on it. We are here to talk about the Oakland Raiders. They're the fourth pick in the draft. Fourth pick in the draft. This is the off-season preview.
But before we get into the off-season preview, let's recap the 2018 season. The Raiders were last in the league in points against, 28th in points scored. Interesting stat with the Raiders is they had the least amount of pass attempts against, but allowed the most passing touchdowns. Can you make sense of this? How does that happen?
Say it one more time, because my mind is...
480 pass attempts, the least amount in the league, so teams threw on them the least. And they allowed 36 passing touchdowns, the most in the league.
Teams were super efficient. I mean, it's, secondary no pass rush. It was just they was back there just pitch and catch, and I mean it was easy. It was practice for the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, man. So looking at the 2018 Raiders, man, personally, I think the biggest issue that they had was the tackle positions. I know they went out and drafted Colton Miller. Was it a top 10 pick or top 15? Number 15? They went out there and drafted Colton Miller in the first round, and he ended up having allowing the most sacks in the NFL. They drafted Brandon Parker a little later. The Donald Penn situation, they just said, he's not playing left tackle. Let's try my right tackle. Didn't work there. They brought in Brandon Parker, and he allowed, I think, the third most sacks in the NFL. So they allowed a lot of sacks on the edges. And then inside is, Ronnie Hudson played well. But Asmelli didn't play his usual Pro Bowl self. I just think the Raiders it was just a mess over there. Derek Carr had no time to throw. They didn't run the ball enough. So offensively, man, it was an issue over there. They traded Amari Cooper. Elephant in the room. On the defensive side, they traded Khalil Mack. They got 2 first-round picks for that. But looking at this roster, I don't see much blue-chip players, man. Like, who's the best player on the Oakland Raiders? Like, who are teams game planning against?
I know right now fans are probably saying Derek Carr, but he's at the end of the season they started to pick it up. Obviously, he started to understand, defense got a little better, offense got a little better. But the best player probably is Rodney Hudson, the center. But this is kind of what I expected in terms of the Raiders and the Jon Gruden offense. Defensively, I thought they would have been better. But you got a lot of young players. I wish I had a Khalil Mack, but offensively, it takes time to learn that offense. There's a lot of terminology and language that you got to get across and you got to understand. And I thought it would fit Derek Carr very well, getting rid of the ball out of his hands. West Coast style offense, just it takes time. And Jon Gruden isn't the best person to get along with. He's not the best person to, he wants results immediately. You know what I mean? And that's okay. But at the same time, you got to understand. You gotta let people, get into it, and it was a struggle, man. Offensive line, I mean, if you can't block, you can't move the football.
You asked the question about opposing teams. Who do they have to game plan for?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is no one.
Yeah.
There's no one who teams fear on the offensive side of the ball or on the defensive side of the ball. That doesn't mean that the Raiders don't have potential.
Yeah,
I like Maurice Hurst. I like Arden Key. We started to see some flashes from Garyon Conley. There's some good players, and we've seen good football from Derek Carr in the past. And that center and those 2 guards, Gabe Jackson and Galicia Asmelli. There's reason to be optimistic, particularly when you're talking about the 3 first-round picks. It's just that they have to nail those. And when we're talking about, as we move into talking about the 2019 offseason, one of the questions I have is, is Oakland, particularly with the transition that they're going through, the way everything kind of took place and how the chips fell ultimately after the trading of Khalil Mack and that whole contract situation and moving Amari Cooper out, who frankly wasn't playing well in Oakland. You know what I mean? Now, he seemed to find new life in Dallas, and it could be that, maybe just Cooper wasn't necessarily built for that particular environment. You know what I mean? But talented football player, nonetheless. Are free agents, veterans, are they clamoring? Because that's what Jon Gruden wants. I would imagine, historically, he's wanted veteran players, guys that, there's not a whole lot of teaching I have to do. I can call my offense, I can install my game plan, and we run it. You know what I mean? But are veterans going to be clamoring to come to Oakland? What do you think?
I mean, you're talking about a team that's essentially going to eventually move to Las Vegas. You're talking about a team. You have Carr and you had Gruden. I saw it, both of them saying, "Hey, this is a destination. Free agents want to come here." I mean, I don't know that to be the case. Jon Gruden isn't. I said it. I'm gonna say it again. He's not the easiest to get along with. Is he? If you're not willing to pay Khalil Mack, who the hell are you willing to pay? You know what I mean? That's out there now. That's out there in the universe. That's out there now. And there's the whole, what is it, state tax? You got that whole thing. So, I mean, and you're going to have to pay people a little bit more to come that way, so I don't know. I mean, hit us in the comment section. With everything that was just stated, is it a destination for you just want to come to?
Yeah, I think it's tough, like you said, everything that you mentioned, but I still believe Jon Gruden has some kind of luster still. Like, this is Chucky. He won a Super Bowl. I remember seeing him on Monday Night Football. I think he has a little luster left, but it's fast dissipating, and he needs to cash in on these draft picks and these free agents this season before it gets even worse. Trading a Khalil Mack. Veterans are going to look at that, and they're going to say, hold on, this was an all-pro player at two positions, and you didn't give him the money, so why should I come play for you? And, and once you get inside the room with Chucky, it gets even more difficult, based on his past. So, yeah. Does players want to come there? It remains to be seen.
I'm acutely aware that the Khalil Mack situation wasn't black and white. It wasn't binary. You know what I mean? There were some complications there in terms of money and escrow but you got to figure that out. You got to find a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it kind of came off as if Jon Gruden is now in town. I'm here with my 10 for $100 million, and it's my way or the highway, regardless of who you are, regardless of what you've accomplished, regardless of your age, whether or not you're in your prime. So to your point, we get to this draft now. And they have 3 first-round picks. 4th overall, as we mentioned, the 24th overall selection, and the 27th overall selection. In order for the Raiders to be competitive in the AFC West that now features Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, Phillip Rivers is still playing good football, and the Chargers are a viable contender as well. We'll see what the Broncos ultimately become, assuming they can get their quarterback situation addressed. But it's not easy in the AFC West. It's going to be tough trying to climb that mountain. So in terms of this particular draft class, of course you need to hit. And the draft is a crapshoot. There's no mistake about it. But how are you approaching using those 3 picks?
Yeah, I think the Oakland Raiders have a lot of needs.
Mm-hmm.
They need a receiver. I think they need another tackle. They need pass rushers. They need linebackers, secondary. So
could they use a running back?
They could use a running back. Definitely could use a running back. My thought process is we need to get some more picks. Trade that 4th pick, trade down, get some even more picks, because they're going to need to fill this roster. And I know a lot of it depends on what they do in free agency. Do they bring in like a Ziggy Ansah? Do they bring in a Jimmy Smith? They need some talent, and they're going to have to overpay for that talent.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on what they do in the offseason, they could come to the draft saying, we need blue chip players, whether it be a Rashawn Gary, whether it be a Ed Oliver, a corner, I like DeAndre Baker. So
how about a Devin White?
Linebacker, a receiver, DK Metcalf. It's a lot of talented players in this draft, but to get it all done, it's going to be hard this season. You might want to trade that 4th pick to get even more talent on your football team.
So Drew, let's say you stay pat at the 4th pick, because you talked about it. We were trying to get a blue chip player here. Now, there's a certain level of depth, particularly on the defensive side of the ball in this particular draft.
Mm-hmm.
But, Nick Bosa's off the board. The kid Allen from Kentucky, he's off the board. Now you're looking at, Rashawn Gary, Ed Oliver, our Cleveland Farrell, Quentin Williams. These are guys that are right on the precipice of blue chip as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know that they struggle to get after the passer. We also know that you can never have enough of those guys. So are you willing to come off of that? Are you willing to come off of that 4th overall pick when you got those guys on the board?
When I look at the Raiders and I think about, what they did last year and where they are this year, I'm a little nervous because the good news is you got 3 picks. The bad news is some of the holes that you have are the picks that you picked last year in the tackle. You know, and is Maurice Hurst, is he ready?
Sure.
Arden Key, is he ready? Like the picks we have, are they ready?
Colton Miller.
Colton Miller. Do I go back to the well? Do I go and do I snatch up a Quentin Williams? Do I snatch up a Ed Oliver? I don't like when teams have to go back to back in terms of one year to the next, picking the same position. Outside of it being, you know, it's the top prospect.
Yeah.
That's wasted capital. You could do other things with so it's I'm kind of, they're in a weird spot, man. It's just weird, and right now, how I feel right now is I'm gonna roll with what I did last year. I'm gonna roll with it, and I'm gonna go get me a Devin White with the number 4 pick. I'm cringing. I'm cringing as I'm passing up on an Oliver and I'm passing up on a Quinn Williams.
Or Cleveland Farrell.
Farrell.
You know, remember that next edge guy.
But let me ask you something. When you think about the Raiders and you think about their linebackers, does anybody pop off?
They needed linebackers for years, man.
Okay. All right.
Years.
That's all I'm saying.
You know, they brought in Derek Johnson. He got injured. We thought they were going to draft a linebacker in the first round last year, you know, but they went Colton Miller. I'm not mad at it, but, you know, to me,
Evans was right there for him.
Yeah, they had Van Der Esch right there also.
I think Devin White is a terrific player. I think he's the top off the ball linebacker. But this team can't afford not to get to the quarterback, regardless of what they've done previously. You know, in last year's draft, they cannot afford. Now, of course, free agency. Of course, free agency is part of it. But I don't know that just going to grab Ziggy or Brandon, for that matter, is enough.
Fowler. Yeah.
Dante Fowler, unless you're getting 2 of those guys, I don't think that's enough.
You're going to still need another pass rusher.
Absolutely.
So, let's say Bosa's off the board and Allen's off the board. Then we're talking about Gary, Michigan, Ed Oliver. He's an interior rusher. Quentin Williams, interior.
Brian Burns.
So do we get another interior, or do we get the Brian Burns, the Polites of the world? Sweats of the worlds, and that's why I say at that 4th spot, you might could trade down.
Sure,
that's the team that needs a quarterback. Denver needs a quarterback. Giants need a quarterback. Jaguars might need a quarterback. Trade down and still get those secondary pass rushers and acquire more draft.
That's probably the number one thing that I want to do if the top guys are off the board. But it takes 2 to trade. It's easy to say, man, they could just trade down. But if someone's trying to swindle you into trade, you know, you gotta do right by your team. So, you know, I don't like the position they're in right now, based off of last year's draft and how things played out, and now we're here. You know?
So at the bottom of the first round, within the last 8 picks, the bottom quarter of the first round, 24 and 27, what are you doing? I look at the offensive side of the ball, and we talked about running back and the fact that they traded Amari Cooper. There's a dearth of weapons around Derek Carr as well. Of course, the offensive line, you know, there's some question marks there. You know, whether people want to actually, you know, cop to it or not, there's some question marks there. We talked about the number of sacks and tackles gave up. They were heavily penalized as well. So, you know, what they can't roll out.
They can't.
You know, the Martavis Bryant, Jordy Nelson.
Jordy Nelson can't be a wide receiver one.
He can't be
another receiver.
You know what I mean? So, what do you foresee the Raiders doing, assuming they stand pat at 24 and 27?
I definitely think in terms of, let me jump back to free agency real quick.
Sure.
They're gonna grab a guy or 2 in free agency. Hopefully, it's not an old man. Let's hope that.
Probably is.
I mean,
that's what Jon
Gruden does. But for Raider fans' sake, let's hope it's not an old man. First of all, and a guy with a little bit of speed, a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of move. But outside of that, I mean, you got to get a receiver, man. You got to surround your quarterback with weapons. I mean, look at Josh Allen up there in Buffalo with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, it's a train wreck. You know, their best receiver is a guy who ran through a glass door. So, you know, with the other pick, I guess you go corner, or maybe we go back-to-back offense. I know you're talking about the tackles. I personally can't spend another pick.
No, you want to see what they develop, but I'm not limiting it to the tackle.
Okay.
We're talking about there is a bevy of needs, and of course, you know, I don't anticipate the Raiders. They're not going to give up on Colton Miller at this juncture. You know what I mean? I think there's better football ahead of Colton Miller. I think what we talked about on the draft was he was one of those fast risers because of the measurables, and that he was going to have some trouble translating to the NFL level.
Yeah.
It's worked out that way, but certainly right tackle is a concern. right? And like I said, there's no one to throw the football to. I mean, there really is nothing on the perimeter to work with.
You know, you got guys like Hollywood Brown, Oklahoma, with his speed. You know, he can free up a lot of things out there.
Harry from Arizona State.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're anticipating Metcalf may already be off the board. If Hollywood runs, you know, 4-3-2, you know,
I don't know if he's gonna be in the 20s though.
He might not get to the 20s.
You know what I mean? So, you know, there's, to your point, there's a lot of areas to address.
I think the Raiders need to get back to running football.
Yeah.
I feel like those offensive linemen are better at running going forward than blocking backwards. And I know Marshawn Lynch had some success and got hurt. I liked what I've seen out of Chris Warren in the preseason. You know, we'll see how healthy he is, but
they said he blew up.
270?
Something like that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, man. Josh Jacobs later in the draft. Sure. My number one in the draft is David Montgomery. He's a dual threat guy that can catch the ball. He can run the football. He's RB1 to me. So if you could get him as your running back and get back to that running game, I think it can help the offensive line. It will help the defense. It will help Jon Gruden. It will help it will help all of you guys, man, to get a dynamic running back in the first round.
Devin Singletary at FAU. Check him out. Look at him.
In terms of, we've always talked about the most important position group is the offensive line, and then certainly, you know, there's nothing, you're not going to be able to do much without a pass rush. So going back to that 4th overall pick, you mentioned Devin White. Heather, you mentioned ideally trade down, get as much value as you possibly can. If you are at number 4, knowing that you could not get to the passer, you're passing up on a guy who can actually affect the passer.
My position is still the same. There's so many pass rushers that it's going to be there. You could trade down from 4 and get
but
I have to pick at 4.
Got to pick at 4.
Is Rashawn Gary?
Okay.
Is Rashawn Gary? He's the next best pass rusher.
Take a polite from Florida.
As of right now, what I'm seeing, Rashawn Gary's the 3rd guy.
Okay. We didn't touch on the secondary too much. There's some concerns about Carl Joseph's size, and I think Carl Joseph is a solid player. We saw some flashes. I like Rashawn Melvin. I like, you know, Garrett Conley demonstrated some ability certainly this year, kind of living up a little bit to that billing, that first round billing, you know. And I'm sure there are folks out there watching the video and they're thinking, well, what about such and such in the secondary? To me, you know, depending on how the board falls, yeah, of course. There truly isn't any area along this Raiders roster that can't stand to be improved. You understand what I'm saying? But that being said, it starts up front, as far as I'm concerned. It starts up front. And the more guys you have that can get after the passer, particularly when you gave up a guy who has proven year after year that he can do that very thing that you needed the most, you gotta replace that. And if that, to your point and to your chagrin, that may be going back to the well at a particular position, but there's no, in this league, the way the rules are set up, the way the game is all, you know, everything is designed for points and to protect the quarterbacks. I mean, at least during the regular season, protects the quarterbacks. You got to affect the passer. And if you can't, you're done. You're done. You got to be able to score points and you got to be able to affect the passer. And right now, the Raiders just don't have the horses. So ultimately, with the 3 picks, 3 first-round picks, we'll see what they can do on that front. And we'll see whether or not veterans want to come play for Jon Gruden still.
And let us know in the comment section how, you know, with the 3 picks, what would you go? If you don't know the players, you know, go ahead and just throw the position up there. What positions you think you would go with those 3, you know, picks in the first round? I mean, got a shot, got $71 million in cap space, so, you know, let's see what they do in free agency. But yeah.
Yeah, man. There you have it, man. That's Couch Potato General Manager. Please like, subscribe, and like Drew said, man, comment, let us know what you think. Raider Nation.
Spread the word, man. Spread the word.
Is in the building.